If pornography is behind a man's sexuality, he will never be sexually satisfied, ever. If romantic novelty is behind a woman's imagination for intimacy, she will never be satisfied. Those are the equals in polarity. Sex and intimacy has lasting effects that carry with us, or has the potential to carry with us for an entire lifetime. The trauma, consequences, direct and indirect influences, our outlooks and perceptions on our reality, the formation of our beliefs and opinions about the opposite sex, or even about ourselves. We have to admit that no education goes behind, ironically, sex and intimacy beyond biological information. Pop culture, movies, music videos, Instagram, your ignorant friends, opinions of others who experimented. That's where it comes from. Pornography and romantic novelty. That's where it comes from. The miseducation of sex and intimacy. Imagine assumptions, entitlements, expectations established off of this crisis and miseducation of the evolution from the 5th house to the 7th house to the 8th house. We have a very dangerous recipe that is guaranteed to end in trauma. After legacies of trauma, the passing around of narratives, stories, testimonies, witnessings, everyone ends up having the same stories. And it becomes accepted that it's the truth of our sexuality and of intimacy. While it is really the misfortune of our ignorance. There's another side to it. If we should become interested in proper education. If we can be humble enough to admit and confess in ourselves that we never really understood sex and the mysteries of it. We never really understood intimacy and the mysteries of it. Who has the ability to explain the 8th house? Who can explain the correlation between the fifth house, the seventh house, and the eighth house when it comes to the progression of sexuality, the act of sex, and intimacy? Who can explain it? Who can explain it without poetry, fancy sayings? Crystal and chakra talk. Who can explain it? Who can make it plain? Aha. The eighth house is mysterious. And what gets projected in trine with the eighth house is the 12th house and the 4th house. And what is that trine? That triplicity. It is that it works together towards the process of emotional evolution, purification, education, salvation, healing, and each sign could take precedence depending on the loads of every person. Shadow work would take priority for those who have loads in Scorpio and 8th house. Inner child healing would take precedence for those who have loads in Cancer and 4th house. Addictive behaviors, self-undoings for those who have loads in Pisces and 12th house. And it works in harmony, triggered by sex, triggered by access into the status of intimacy. But although it's a trine, the burden still carries because healing is painful. Purification and salvation is humiliating, vulnerable. It is a continuation of the deaths of self over and over again, quickening the spirit. Unknowingly, sex and intimacy activated this triple alliance of processes that we are totally unaware of. And in our ignorance, it looks like pure chaos, trauma, drama, pain, injury. Oh my God, what is happening? I can't take this. And it just started on a Saturday night. There are laws that govern the 5th house when you're in that status with the opposite sex. There are laws that govern the 7th house when you're in status with the opposite sex. And when that progresses into the 8th house, you are subject to different laws of the 8th house. Do we know the laws of these houses? So that we could be intentional. Do we know how it operates? So we don't fall what we will want to claim as victim. At every act of sex between a male and a female, that trine is heavily active of the water. The 12th house is just as mysterious as the 8th house. The 4th house is just as mysterious as the 12th and 8th house. These are mysterious houses. Before approaching sex and intimacy, do we understand what it means to do inner child work, inner child healing? Do we understand our inner child? Because that's what you activate. Do we understand our 12th house? The shadows of lovelessness. The shadows of self-denial. The truth and love that we are fugitive from. Where we have an active warrant against us to bring us back to the courts of justice, where we must face truth and love once and for all. The generational curse. The confession that lingers in us that we have to find the courage to align with. Our measure of compassion, empathy, universality, and love that can only manifest through our own suffering. Do we understand that that is what's behind the symbolism that we see in the act of sex? And you're projecting that to each other in the act of sex, with the thought and anticipation that in the other person is an answer, a solution, or a scapegoat. Can you imagine the magnitude of not knowing that, but yet you're in that act? In the 8th house, there's shadow work. Deep truths to accept so that we can get to love. Harsh realities to align with so that we can get to empowerment. Disillusionment to accept so that we can get to authenticity. Layers and layers of vulnerabilities that we guard ourselves against. But without resilience, without strength, without honesty, you blame the other person. You accuse the other person. You vilify the other person. You attempt to destiny swap with the other person. You seek to take the power of the other person because you don't feel yours. And so sex becomes another way. Intimacy becomes another way to confiscate the power of the other person because you couldn't brave to retain your own. And this manifests the acts of control, domination, assumptions, entitlements, shame, and guilt. Even into the extremes of vengeance, resentment, and attachment to trauma. We don't know anything about sex. We don't know anything about intimacy. We don't have the competence to teach and explain sex or teach and explain intimacy, but yet we have so much of it. Yet we feel so entitled to indulge in it, but incapable of teaching it, incapable of explaining it. Short of the answer of what it all means and how it works together. Is there something wrong with this? Is there something irresponsible about that? We are fortunate people in this community that we have astrology. Where these complex concepts can be so simplified through astrology. Essentially, what I'm speaking of is synastry. Synastry can be a beautiful fusion of two souls, but without awareness of the chaos and violence that energies can produce as they fuse, fear will kick in. Intimidation will kick in. Insecurity will kick in. Ignorance will take control. And there will be explosion after explosion as a fusion takes place. And we won't see it through. Because we don't understand what's happening. Different elements fusing together. The properties, their frequencies, alchemical processes, two alchemists, but without understanding of alchemy. Chemists mixing properties with no degree in chemistry. This is what happens when ignorant people have sex, when ignorant people approach intimacy. You step into a chemistry lab with no knowledge of biochemistry, with no knowledge of physics. no knowledge of alchemy. And you're just putting stuff together, hoping for the best. Will this explode? Will this dissolve? Will this fuse? Will this repel? Will this resist? Will this magnetize? You're guessing. We are a fortunate community that we have astrology, and we can refer to these things. And in that, there's a view of the future if we become interested in learning the mysteries of the 4th, the 12th, and the 8th house when it comes to sex and intimacy that expresses itself through the 5th, the 7th, and the 8th house. If we should come to understand this, we can assume leadership in making sure that sex and intimacy is truly understood in the world, starting with those nearest to us. I want to encourage everyone to understand who they are sexually and who they are intimately, in study of your chart, in study of the chart of those who you enter intimate spaces with, or who you may have sexual commitments with. Because we as a community can be different. We don't have to fall victim to what's going on out there. We can know better. We can learn better so that we can teach, so that we can explain. In that, we become guardians, advocates, protectors, guides, trustees, because most do not know better. I want us to become interested in understanding sex and understanding intimacy through astrology. Your water trine, affected by the progression of sexual interests and intimate vulnerabilities that escalate from the 5th, the 7th, into the 8th house. And what takes place in each house, what laws we are subject to in each house, universally and individually. I challenge every one of you to come to this understanding. I challenge every one of you to know yourself in this context. Let's know better. Let's be among those who do understand. Because we have access to that understanding. But that has to begin with your own curiosity and interest in knowing. That has to come from your own heart. It's a very big responsibility. Sex and intimacy. It is very easy to injure, traumatize, offend, even destroy if we are ignorant, if we remain ignorant, if we continue to choose the convenience of bliss, the bliss of ignorance. It is inevitable that we continue to injure ourselves and others. So, I'm sharing this message in the hopes that all of you, but I know realistically, some of you, will begin to look into these things in your natal chart. That you will investigate these things about yourself in your natal chart. Come to an understanding from your natal chart. Don't guess. Know and understand. Be in position to explain it, teach it, articulate it, and even demonstrate. It deepens our capacity to trust ourselves and to afford trust of others. And when there is trust, intimacy is much deeper. It expands understanding so that compassion is that much greater. As compassion and understanding are twins. Let's come to understand sex and intimacy and what it really is about. Starting with your chart. The 8th house is a difficult house to understand. The 12th house is a difficult house to understand. The 4th house is a difficult house to understand. But it's our responsibility to understand it. It's part of how we come to understand ourselves. But you have to want to know. Valentine's Day was just a few days ago. Can we imagine how many people in that night just took assumptions, took a chance, went for it, with pornography and romantic novelty behind what they're assuming? And neither will be able to reach fulfillment of the pornographic expectation, nor satisfaction. Neither will be able to reach the fulfillment of the romantic novelty expectation or its satisfaction, and they will charge each other for it and go to war. It will become violent, indignant, traumatizing, controlling. And the cycles continue on, echoing generational curses behind us because of what we never wanted to understand. We only wanted to control. If you find that it's difficult for you to come to an understanding about, you can schedule with me for a session so that I can give you the basics, give you notes, so that you can begin studying yourself in this context. Study with someone. Choose a study partner. Why not? We've got to study ourselves. We are being trusted as the guardians of this generation. All of you. You are the guardians of this generation. You are the light workers of this generation, the healers of this generation, the teachers of this generation. You are. And you should intentionally accept that responsibility. That's why you're here. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be listening to me. You wouldn't be listening to Susan or other people who are meant to remind you. You wouldn't be here if that wasn't who you are.